fellows who've ever gone through a globalizer.
Oh my goodness, we got so many fans out there or something. And we also have more folks online. So it looks like Dave is here, Dave Flink from Eye to Eye.
Great.
Also newest Ashoka Fellow dad. Maybe, I think you still have that, at least in the US. I don't know if we've had any newer dads yet.
Hi there, I just joined. I'm Dave.
And it looks like we have Wendy. Wendy, can you hear us? It looks like you're on mute, Wendy. So the audio should be in the bottom left corner of your screen.
Hi, sorry, I'm Wendy's associate. She's coming in just a minute. I was just getting it started for her.
Awesome, thank you so much. What's your name?
Samantha.
Hi, Samantha. I think we've been on emails. It's nice to meet your face. Face to face. Lennon Flowers here. Hi, Lennon.
Hi there.
Hey, Lennon.
Lennon is another not yet public but newly elected Ashoka.
So exciting. I was so excited to see her name on the fellow list. That's amazing.
Thank you. Me too.
Excellent. Really cool.
We'll wait for Wendy to hop on. But in the meantime, I think we've got a critical mass here. Is everyone available on this call? Good question, Paula. I think we have a critical mass to go ahead and just go. Oh, it's Wendy. Hi, Wendy.
Hi, Wendy.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm so excited that we have 8 people here within the first minute. That never happens. Let's go ahead and get started. And I think some folks will trickle in, but I would love to, first of all, welcome you all. Thank you for taking time out of your Friday mornings or afternoons, depending on where you're sitting. So excited to see the turnout and interest around this topic. Wendy, for you taking the time, Globalizer team for building this space to talk about how we spread ideas. And we'll take the next hour. We're gonna hear from the Globalizer team just to so Odin and Nadine run Ashoka's Globalizer program, which helps fellows think through global scale, and really at the core of it, they have just solidified frameworks around how do social entrepreneurs really open their ideas up. Wendy agreed to come with us in leading this conversation. So before we get started, my name is Brittany. I work with the US Fellowship team. Folks who are not Nadine and Odin on this call, everyone who's on the video is an Ashoka Fellow. It looks like all US based. I think we have a couple global fellows coming in. And a lot of people on the call listening in, watching. So thanks all of those who are here listening. Really exciting to explore this all with you. So let's just go around, those on the video, to keep time, and because we have the briefing that goes a little bit further into what all of us do, let's just go around and say our names and organizations. I'll hand it over to Nadine and Odin, and then we'll jump in. One last thing, you'll see in the chat, I've shared a link to a Google document. This has a bit of the framing and the things that we'll be talking about. We'll also be transcribing the call as we go. And we recognize that a call with 9-10 people isn't a lot of time to get all of the questions, all of the reactions. Maybe somebody says something that really resonates with you. This is something that everybody has access to, and we really encourage you to write in as we go if you have any reactions, comments, questions, especially things that might be particularly to one person, a resource that is in response to a question or comment. This is, a resource that we'll use to get as much brain power as we can on the call. I'm going to stop talking. I have like this Brady Bunch set up, so to my top right is Paula. I don't know if that's the same configuration that you're seeing, but maybe we'll, no, it's not. Well, let's just go around, fellows joining, name and organization, and then we'll jump in.
Well, I'll start. I'm Paula. I'm based in New York City, and I run an organization called 596 Acres, which is New York City's community land access advocacy organization. We have primarily been focusing on getting publicly owned land into the hands of people who are the public by creating pocket parks and farms and gardens. And we also work in coalition with folks who are working on housing and community controlled land for housing. And we've worked with advocates in a few other cities in very focused ways and hope to kind of try to take this moment to try to expand that into more of a global strategy.
Wonderful. And let's go to our other newest fellow, just to warmly welcome the two of you first. We're just so excited that you're both a part of this now. So Lennon.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lennon, and I'm here with the dinner party. I can talk more about that at length, but it's great to be with you all. And we're facing a lot of very pertinent questions to this conversation. So I'm really excited for what's ahead.
Awesome. Welcome, Lennon. And real quick, Dave, Stacy, Eric, Paul.
Hi, I'm Stacy Epperson, Next Step Network, a national nonprofit network partnering with the manufactured housing industry to do manufactured housing done right, which is prepared and supported home buyers receive highly energy efficient quality homes. Thanks.
And our other champion in the housing world, Paul. Paul of Resident-Owned Communities. And I think Dave and Eric.
Hey there, I'm Dave Flink. I know pretty much all of you on the phone with Eye to Eye, representing the 1 in 5 people in America who learn and think differently, like dyslexia and ADHD. Glad to be on the call.
Cool.
Hi, I'm Eric with Educate and Watson University. Educate's in Uganda, Watson is in the States, and both focus on social entrepreneurship education, and very curious about the question of kind of replication versus franchising.
And you may need to mute. Okay, did Paul and Megan want to?
Do others hear that?
Yes, it's very loud.
Can everyone mute their line? All right, and Megan, please introduce your name and organization.
Hi everyone, I think that crazy noise was coming from me, so I feel really bad speaking right now. My name is Megan, and I'm the CEO and founder of Fuel Ed, and we are a nonprofit organization that's founded to improve student outcomes by developing the social and emotional competencies of educators. So to fill that critical gap in educator preparation, as educators are really trained as these technical instructors, when in reality, so much of their job is interpersonal.
Megan, I think that yeah, there's maybe you're on your phone and your audio, but your audio options are on the bottom left, so maybe do some troubleshooting there. Great. I'm gonna Megan, welcome. Megan is from Fuel Ed.
I fixed it, guys. That was what it was. Sorry.
Nice.
I called in and then I got the video working. So I apologize for that crazy noise.
No, you're fine. We just did names and organizations, so I'm gonna go ahead and all of your links and information are on the briefing. So I'm gonna hand the microphone over to Nadine and Odin from the Globalizer team, who are co-hosting this. They are the experts and residents at Ashoka around scale and scaling strategy, and so glad to be doing this with them. So they're gonna just give kind of a 5-minute framework for what they've learned and what they've learned with and from Wendy. And then Wendy, we'll turn it over to you, hear a little bit about your own journey with Teach for All and Teach for America and the differences, similarities in how you scaled, and then we'll just jump into a Q&A for really the rest of the hour. And you're on mute, Nadine.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you, Brittany, and thank everyone here, all the people who are on the panel whose videos we're all seeing, and all the people, all 39 of you other participants who are connecting in to watch this. It's really exciting for us at the Globalizer. We have been dedicated for the last 6 years in figuring out how to best spread social impact. And for us, this is one of the ways of us walking our talk, spreading what we've learned to others. So we're, when I keep seeing the participant numbers jumping up, I'm really excited about that. And we're really excited to be doing this both with the US fellowship team and also with Wendy, whose example for us has really always been a strong one. And so we're quite excited to have her here, really representing a lot of the frameworks that we have been promoting for a while. So with that, I'm actually going to pass it over to my colleague, Odin. I'm talking to you from Peru. He's in Germany. The Globalizer team also lives up to its global name. We have members in practically all continents at this point. So Odin, I'm going to pass it to you, and you can put up your slides, I think. And thank you again.
Welcome everybody also from my side. My name is Odin. I'm talking to you from Hamburg today. Just a quick question. This is the first time I'm using this piece of technology. Can you all see the slide on your screen with 4 ever bigger circles at the center? All right, perfect. So this is the first of only 5 slides. It's going to be a short introduction. We want to make as much use of our great panel as possible, so only a quick introduction here. Let us start with a quote from Bill Drayton, the founder of Ashoka, just to remind us what the goal of social entrepreneurs really is. Bill says, social entrepreneurs are not content with giving people fish or teaching people how to fish. They will not rest until they have revolutionized the fishing industry. And that might sound a bit lofty or grandiose, but this is really what we are after. When you look at the graphic above, we are not in the business of doing more direct service, of trying to give more fish to more people or teaching more people how to fish. We want to find the systemic drivers that make it necessary to give people fish and eradicate these problems. Have an impact on the level that is ultimately responsible for the social problems in the first place. And that's what we call system change. So all we do in terms of strategy needs to have an effect on the systems level at some point. So that's what we try to achieve. When we look at fellows who have achieved a relevant system change, we see that they usually don't do it by having a lot of direct impact. So you can think about direct impact about the things that you yourself improve at your beneficiaries. So if you run a school, then everything good that comes out for your teachers and students and parents will be your direct impact. In contrast to that, if you have, for example, a neighboring school that you teach better teaching methods, then this neighboring school might have more direct impact. And this additional direct impact that the neighboring school has is your indirect impact. So the fact that you allow other people to... Now I'm getting a lot of background noise. Could people check if they might be responsible and put themselves on mute? Thanks. And what we usually see is that direct impact grows over time. Fellows have a bit of it and then some more, but the successful ones don't achieve system change by that. What they do is they find a clever way to make indirect impact go through the roof. They find the tipping point at which indirect impact self-accelerates and becomes unstoppable. And when we talk about scaling strategies at Ashoka, this is exactly what we try to find. This little trick, this lever to make indirect impact go through the roof. This is a very quick overview of how we think about scaling strategies. We believe that they should have 4 elements. It should have a clear vision on the systems level. We already talked briefly about that. That's the revolutionizing the fishing industry part. And then it needs solutions that ultimately make an impact. This can be a program or a technology or an idea, whatever it might be. We are not going to talk about that so much for today. You have enough examples here at the panel. Then you need delivery models to get those solutions to where they need to be. ways to spread your ideas, to get your programs wherever it needs to be, etc. And finally, it needs partnerships to implement that approach in the most efficient way possible. And for solutions, delivery models, and partnerships, openness is really important if you want to have indirect impact. And so just very briefly, we're going to talk about what openness means in terms of delivery models and partnerships before we hand it over to Wendy to learn more about how that can look like in practice. So this is the quintessential trade-off for delivery models. Basically, the more control you're willing to give up, the more speed you gain, the more potential for indirect impact you gain in return. And so the question is, what is the best way to give up what kind of control, and how do you turn that into indirect impact? Where's the sweet spot on that graph for your organization? And at Globalizer, what we recommend to do is to start at the far right end of the spectrum, the very open pathways, and then see if those might be for you. And if that's too scary, if that's not really feasible, if that little amount of control is not enough for your intervention, then move more and more to the left until you found the idea that can work for you, be it a training approach or an association or whatever it might be. And that's, I think, what we are going to discuss in a moment. Like, how do you find the right way? How do you make that kind of assessment? And just to mention it very briefly, the same idea about openness also applies to partnerships. So here too, the more control you're willing to give up, the more potential for indirect impact you get. If you have no connections to anybody, you have full control over what's happening, but you also don't leverage your impact. Then you might have one-on-one partnerships. So here, somebody gets something from you, somebody has a say in how you tap certain networks, that kind of thing. So you need to give up some degree of control, but you get a lot of assets or opportunities in return. And then there's something that we call smart networks on the right, and that's where you give up a lot of control. Actually, you don't even see yourself as an organization at the center anymore, but you put your systemic vision at the center. So you become only one out of several organizations who push for that vision to become a reality. All the other players become your equals and have an equal say in what this network is doing. So you need to step back a lot, you need to give up a lot of control, but those are the kinds of networks that we realize more and more are really important to achieve impact on the systems level. All right, those are the three most important concepts from the perspective of Ashoka Globalizer. System change as a goal, indirect impact to make it happen, and openness as a way to achieve indirect impact. Now, that's enough theoretical talk. Let's hand it over to Wendy and let her talk a little bit about how that looks like in her organizations.
Thank you, Odin. Systems change in 5 minutes, which is quite a feat and beautifully done. Wendy, I've seen you nodding along to things Odin has said, and you know, a lot of fellows who have joined this call submitted questions beforehand, and there are several people who basically said something along the lines of, we're contemplating how to spread right now and deciding between a centralized or decentralized approach. You wrote a beautiful article in SSIR that talks about with Teach for All challenging this notion that scaling with quality requires top-down approaches. So I'd love to hear just your reactions, what stuck out from Odin's framing, and really just like what you've learned along the way in both experiences. We'll give Wendy, 7-10 minutes to share, and then we'll open to Q&A from the group.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm so happy to be part of this discussion. I mean, it was so many social entrepreneurs who I admire and who have at least as much to share on the topic. So I really look forward to, the exchange. I actually thought the best way for me to come at this would be to just hopefully, I got to watch my clock, like concisely share the choices we've made at Teach for All and what that journey has been and what the big lessons thus far have been. I mean, with the huge caveat that I really feel like we are baby steps into this. I mean, the verdict is still very much out. We're 9 years in, but you know, it's such early days. So with all of that, I just to clarify, I mean, the way Teach for All came about, it didn't come about by us waking up and saying, how do we go global? I mean, I just want to correct that because I think, in fact, the way it started kind of determined how we approached it. And I was really surprised along the way by what I've learned from this approach that I might not have woken up and designed. The way it started was that, I mean, I had my head down. I was focused on Teach for America, and there was just something in the water in the rest of the world. And within a year, in this particular year, about 10 years ago, there were 13 people in 13 different countries, just for one reason or another, had become determined to do something similar in their countries and were looking for help. And that's what led to the question and ultimately the launch of Teach for All. And as you may have heard or read, I mean, so we've set this up as a network of independent, locally led organizations with a global organization whose mission is to accelerate and increase the impact of the network. And I probably don't need to belabor what we do, but in like a couple sentences, just so that everyone's on the same page about that. I mean, there's a core purpose that each of these organizations shares and that we all share, which is to essentially develop collective leadership to ensure that all kids have the opportunity to fulfill their potential. Like, all of these organizations are addressing this massive, complex, systemic challenge of the fact that the circumstances of kids' birth predict their educational outcomes and in turn life outcomes. And we believe that the only real path to sustainable, true change is to cultivate a lot of leadership in any given community to take that issue on in all of its complexity. And so this is an effort to contribute to that leadership through galvanizing the energy of the rising generation of folks, you know, initially getting them to commit 2 years to teach in low-income communities. We have seen that that is very foundational for then what becomes a lifetime commitment to change, working from within education, from outside education, et cetera. So that's, you know, kind of what this work is about. When we started off the global work, we identified our kind of theory of change about what it would take to maximize impact globally. It sounds so simple, but it really has grounded every single decision we've made. And the theory was that maximizing impact would be about two things working together. One, you know, local social entrepreneurs with a vision for, you know, a vision for adapting this into their context and full ownership. And the other would be a platform that would enable those folks to not keep reinventing the wheel and making all the same mistakes, but to actually learn from each other so that they could make different mistakes and you know, innovate on top of everyone else's lessons. So the way that informed our choices were, first of all, we're responsive to the initiative of these local social entrepreneurs. And while we do go out, you know, we have some countries of strategic importance where we will actually go and build awareness of this approach, like meaning the core programmatic approach. We still then step back and wait for someone to come along who decides, I really want to make this happen. And so that's one choice. Another was to, you know, we set up a system that would ensure that everyone in the network was actually pursuing the same aims, like the same theory of change. We're unified by certain principles programmatically and organizationally. We're, you know, wanted to engage in a global network in line with certain core values. There are kind of dimensions of impact that everyone's trying to maximize, and we can kind of look at how people are doing based on these network impact indicators. But it's very principle-based. There's nothing prescriptive. We don't have any cookie cutters, and nothing is prescribed. You can do anything you want as long as you live into these these principles. And in fact, we believe very strongly that people need to develop their own solutions. And then we've created a global organization that actually does make a very significant investment in the development of those local partners through 4 core competencies that we're working to build. One is around providing direct support, essentially in all the areas that folks are having to deal with, from teacher recruitment to government relations to the next thing. We have a whole effort to identify and the evolving kind of principles that undergird success and spread those principles, spread the insights of the work through direct support, like specialists based in regions in those different areas who go out to the partners and actually provide sort of technical assistance. That's one piece of the support. The second is fostering connections. We have found that these folks are each other's greatest source of support, greatest source of inspiration, but it takes kind of facilitation. Last year, we organized 27 gatherings of one sort or another, like heads of like functions, partners grappling with the same challenge, visiting a partner that had figured it out, a big global conference, et cetera. Third big thing we do is contribute to the leadership development of the staff and cohorts of the real leaders among the teachers and alumni, meaning they're all doing that themselves, but we use the resources we have and the assets we have as a global organization to contribute additionally to the leadership development of these folks, in part because we believe that leadership should be both locally rooted and globally informed. And then finally, we access global resources for the benefit of the whole, which can be funding or Salesforce partnerships so that everyone's not reinventing the same contact data management system, et cetera. So that's kind of, and the final thing I'll say about how that theory has informed our approach is that we orient everything we do to support our partners around questions rather than answers. So meaning, we want them all obsessing over what's the best possible answer to, there are multiple questions, right? Like, how do we select? How do we do this? How do we do X, Y, and Z? And there are common questions that everyone is grappling with. They can add questions, they can evolve the questions over time, and they do. But that enables us to then we can do everything we can to help them make the best possible choices by showing them, here are the insights learned, here are tools other people have developed, et cetera. So just that's kind of what we've done. Just a couple words on the biggest lessons learned from this for me, and 2 big lessons. One is that, and I tried to speak to this in that article that you shared, but I've come to think that this is really, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe 5 years from now, I'll look back and be like, oh my gosh, I was deluded. But I've come to think that this is the path to not just, this is the path to strength. Like, this is the path to innovation, getting much better, much more quickly. It's really challenged my own assumptions. I was terrified. Honestly, the day before we launched Teach for All, I called this woman who was the poor woman working with me on designing the whole thing, rock star. I'm like, you know what? We can't do this. We just can't do it. Like, everything we've learned at Teach for America it's all about how you do it. This is too loose. It's just, we can't go forth. And thank heaven she talked me off the ledge, because what I've seen is actually this isn't about trying to get everyone to a certain bar. It's about everyone's inspiring themselves to be to greater and greater heights, honestly. And I guess what I've seen is that there are challenges in every system. Anyone can come into Teach for All and be like, hello, these are the top 100 challenges you face. Yes, meaning weaknesses in the system, things that aren't as good as they should be. There's so much that isn't what it should be. But the thing is, that is true, at least in our world. That is also true in the centralized system. I just believe that is true everywhere. And the question is, in which system do those problems get solved most quickly? And I've actually seen, and this really shocked me, but that they get solved most quickly in this world that I'm describing at Teach for All. In fact, to the point where we're helping Teach for America evolve its whole model, which they decided to do for whatever reason, and for the same reason. They're going to almost transform themselves into a very similar thing. So is Teach for India. I mean, I think anyway, so that's one lesson. The second is that this isn't, and I think some people misunderstand what at least we mean by this. Like, this isn't about just letting everyone go do whatever they want and having access to a platform. Like, no, the central capacity building that we're doing is super important. And it's each of those elements I described, from the direct support to the connections to the leadership development to the global resources. Like, I honestly, in fact, if we could do all of those things much better, which is what we're endeavoring to do in the global organization, we could do so much to accelerate impact. So I would hate for that to be misunderstood, because I think the real thing here really is the theory of change that I described before. It is about the local ownership and vision and all, plus the global capacity building and platform for learning and sharing. Those are my thoughts, but very curious what you all's thoughts and questions and insights are on this topic.
Oh, Wendy, we could just transcribe this directly into an article. Thank you so much for opening with that. I'd love to do two things. One, panelists on the chat, if you have questions that are coming up, I wonder if, like, whatever top of mind question you have, let's just enter it in the chat, and I'll kind of sift through and see what's bubbling up. I know one question that was asked ahead of time had to do with probably one thing that was so scary about, you said, I was so scared I didn't want to do this. Lennon, you asked a beautiful question kind of around what happens to that quality bar that I'd love for you to share with the group, and Wendy, maybe hear some of your thoughts on. But Lennon, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Hi. So I guess my question, so we kind of started the dinner party as a community of mostly 20 and 30 somethings who get together over potluck meals to talk about shared experiences of loss as a way of changing our society's relationship to loss and grief and death and dying, and a lot of subjects that we're generally pretty good at not talking about, to pretty significant cost. And I guess one of the surprising things for us was, from day one, we realized that we couldn't physically be in spaces hosting these conversations each and every time. So it really became about naming the principles of what was working, what wasn't, actually enabling people to take on the role of host, growing a host community from 2 people to 275, and then understanding what are the kind of characteristics that lead to really meaningful micro community. And I think one of the things that's been really interesting for us is that actually the bar has risen in what a dinner party is, and that you end up identifying pretty quickly. And I think that that's one of my questions for you is I'd love to hear about a partnership that has been absolutely rock star and transformational, and then actually one that didn't work. And because I think for us, the kind of question has been, how do we identify those two things as quickly as possible and really lift up and elevate the stories around what's working so that the bar raises for everybody else? Because, and how do you incentivize that kind of the good kind of competition of like, hey, everybody, inspired by, stories of what's working, that actually people end up feeling more fired up that they're part of something much larger, and they go, further to the ends of the earth to actually, replicate and act on that themselves. And then the ones that don't work, how do we, identify that quickly and not kind of waste resources, mostly in terms of time. On the development of those partnerships. And now we're in the process of actually working with institutions ranging from companies to churches to grief support agencies to individuals. We've got our first dinner party happening in Guatemala tonight, and I'm kind of aware that we're in this position where it's a new kind of scale of, it's certainly a new set of challenges as it relates to scale, but it's also, once again, faced with the possibility of we could work with everyone and no one, and we don't have we're a small team. And so how do you get really sophisticated about who you choose to work with, what actually delivers the ultimate impact, particularly as it relates to culture change?
Yeah. My thought to your question, and I am going to kind of avoid talking about the best and the worst for all sorts of reasons that you can imagine, but actually my real answer is that I think there's something about our system that, I mean, we've had 2 partners not make it. One has, actually 3, one is in the process of relaunch, like it was an intentional, same founder, we needed a different funding situation. Another, another has relaunched under a different leader, and, but we have 40 partners, and, knock on wood, again, who knows what will happen. But I think one thing that is leading to this largely actually working is that what happens is we invest a lot in the people who are in the pipeline. Like, there are 30 people out there in other 30 countries not in the network who are trying to build the support for this. And we are investing a lot in them. Like, they are going through this immersion experience. We're kind of working alongside them as they develop the plan for adapting this into their context, find the funding, get the governmental approval. So we are not selecting them, interestingly, but they have to do a lot. I mean, the bar, to get the governments to agree to hire these teachers, despite the regulatory environment, which can be really tough, to find the funding, to build the team, and to so we get to know them. There's not a selection thing. It's like, we need to know that they are genuinely pursuing this theory of change in alignment with these principles. And we know them so well, it's not about an interview. This is like, we know either you're really doing this or you're actually doing something else. If they're really doing it, no matter what we think, we love them all, but if we didn't, we would still bring them into the network, because we want to be learning from their innovations and contributing to their impact. And we know that they're going to do it because their people in the country have selected them to do it. So I think that in that process, a lot of people fall out, a lot of people. So maybe that's the thing. Like, there's a bar that people are meeting to even get into the network. I'm seeing some of these questions on the chat. Should I go for these, or do you all want to facilitate?
I think one. Well, if any jump out at you, I'll also, some are on the Google Docs, so I'll just paste them all in the chat, and
okay,
ones jump out at you in particular, by all means. I think one interesting thing that Megan, you said, or you asked in the Google Doc, is around the transition of Teach for America to Teach for All. Like, what does it look like to transition an organization that started as more closed and has to go on that journey toward opening? Megan, how did I do paraphrasing your question? This is Megan from Fuel Ed, asked it in written.
Yeah, I will let you just read these out, because I'm realizing I could get caught up in reading. Okay, so so to answer, I think it's probably a lot tougher to transition an existing, but you also have a lot of assets because you've got a lot of built-in knowledge. I think the biggest lesson I would say from watching the Teach for America journey is that, I think first designing the center, and figuring out what are you going to do to build the capacity of the regions that will be more independent and autonomous is super important. Like, just letting people go, that isn't the answer either to something I shared before. Like, you really need to have a strategy for how are we going to, that's how the quality bar, that's how it is the path to strength. Like, honestly, these folks across the network who are launching now, they have seen the best of what's out there across the network, and they're thinking, we're going to do this better. And they make real runs at it, and they do it better. I could take you to really strong programs that would make those of you who know TFA be like, oh, wow, now what are you doing to help Teach for America? Which we are doing. Like, we're doing a lot, to bring the lessons back and help people get to the next level. So that's probably the biggest thing I would say about transitioning, is just, you have a lot to work with because you know what it takes, and you can design the center first before letting everyone just go in a way. Eric, your question, I don't think I know what you mean by replication. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, sorry, I guess I meant more the Teach for America approach, the original Teach for America approach. That's kind of one organization growing and maybe replicating in a new location, but under one organization still.
Branching, yeah.
Okay, and so you were asking how to make the decision.
Exactly.
I mean, now, again, like there are huge limitations to I'm like now in my new bubble of, oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with what I've seen in this. And I feel like now, even if I were working in a national context, I would try to figure out, how do I find my way to essentially the local social entrepreneur, like the person in a local community? I mean, I'm assuming that you all may be doing such different things, like local rootedness and really taking a community level approach in the work we do is just so important. Like it's super complex at every community level. So finding, like, we need like the social entrepreneur of any given community, even in a national context. And I think that's even like 10 times more true in a global context. I don't know. I'm now such a fan of this that I'm just, because I think it's also, then those people really own it. They stay longer. They're of the community. I know I'm not doing it. I don't know what the argument is on the other side. I've actually kind of, it's probably the path to quicker, I don't know. I'm sure there are maybe people on the phone could make the argument for the other side, but I actually really regret not making the transition within TFA earlier, because I think it's just really, really, really hard to manage at huge scale, at least in this work where the work needs to be so contextualized in a centrally managed system. There was a question about how to ensure consistency of core values. We do a couple things. One, we have a set of core values that we've created. In fact, we're refining them right now because we're now 40 partners strong. We've learned a lot since we first created them many years ago. But so we've got this kind of network-wide process to analyze, like, when we're at our best, when we are working together across the network, what are the beliefs that are core? And, those values, we do a lot. People know what those values are and they characterize, we're constantly reinforcing them, and people come into the network signing on to, we want to operate in accordance with these core values. At the same time, we think that developing a really strong local organization, one of the big insights is you need to figure out in your context what needs to be true in order to be successful in this. What will have to be the core beliefs at the root of everything your teachers, your alumni, your staff members, your board members do. And we really believe that that decision has to be the founders' work, and it has to be contextualized. So one of the things we do in supporting these folks, that's one of the insights, right? It's like, okay, so the big question is, what are the beliefs that are most at work when you look in the history of your country, and see successful social change, et cetera? Like, what are the values that you're going to build this on? And then what are the steps you're going to take to build a powerful culture around those values? And somehow, if you met these folks, you would think, gosh, they're so values driven. And I think we've been lucky, honestly. Like, we've really magnetized people who have, really represent the same kind of values.
Wendy, I'm going to jump into, there are a lot of questions. I think maybe we can knock this out in kind of a rapid fire, like technical questions around what happens if someone does something unethical, like who is it, where do the legal implications fall of a decentralized model? Who funds what? We'll start there. We'll do like 3 or 4 kind of quicker.
Yeah. We're doing a whole review about the unethical question again, we haven't run into this yet, and we have a clause in our partnership agreement. Each of these organization signs a partnership agreement with the global organization, and I can't even remember. There's the clause, and therefore if we can just terminate these partnerships and take back the the name, and that's basically what would happen. But we are looking at it again just to be sure that we have all our ducks in a row in the event. I mean, that something happens, because we get many corporate people who ask us this question. That's one thing. On the funding, each of these organizations is funding themselves locally. That's another big choice. Like we just really believe that that's part of sustainability. We do a lot to help build their capacity to build diversified, sustainable funding bases. We are really grappling with the question of how to support these folks in very, very under-resourced countries like Haiti and Ghana and Uganda and such, and are exploring creating kind of a greatest needs fund where we, find global resources, but we're doing it with a lot of thought given to how to set it up in a way that it kind of galvanizes local resources that will be sustainable, and just essentially gives folks the run room in the early years to demonstrate a track record, but with the expectation that they'll fully sustain themselves ongoing. I mean, I'm sure there's a journey of learning ahead of us on that. And then we do have some global corporate we pursue resources, but it's gravy on the top for these partners. We raised only probably like $5 million for them in the last year. But that's still, it helps it in different places, but no one's expecting us to do it. Then we fund ourselves, like the global organization secures its own funding, which is super, super challenging. If anyone wants to come into the global ed space and build a global organization, just beware that there are very few, there's just not a constituency for it. I hope that's about to change, but it's very hard to find the resources for the global organization. And we've chosen for many reasons not to charge the partners. They do so much to contribute to this, and they have so many pressures on them. And we think I would rather decrease the budget, cut out a lot of the capacity building than start charging them, because I think it would also just very fundamentally change the culture, which is super, and people want to engage globally at the moment.
Super helpful. Thanks. Any other like very technical questions? Maybe a couple more with that have kind of quicker responses, and then we can kind of. Eric, you've got your hand up.
Just because it's on the subject, I know the Nature Conservancy is scaled by, in effect, paying for the salary of the founder of a new geography, and then that organization pays 5% of their revenue back to the central office over time. And kind of curious, where you're still charging in that case, you also provided some upfront capital to help launch in a new location. I was wondering to get your thoughts on that type of revenue model.
Uh-oh, either Wendy's very still or she's frozen.
She froze.
She's really thinking about it. Oh no, other people's. Well, but while we get Wendy back, any like thoughts, reflections? Is this resonating?
Odin, you might want to jump in with the point we were discussing.
Well, I made some notes for the final statements, but maybe since Wendy is not here, we can share them now. So for me, 3 things stood really out so far. First is this perspective that is really great and quite different from what we hear from external audiences when we present our ideas about openness, right? So what we usually hear is that, look, quality is so important, we cannot afford to open up. And here the discussion is quite different. Here the question is, how do we open up in order to improve quality? And that is exactly how we believe we should be thinking about this question. It's also, so when you think about the Ashoka vision of everyone a changemaker and everybody a leader, this is what happens and what becomes possible in a world where everybody is a leader and a changemaker. Like you enable others to improve your idea, to give back, you make them part of the journey. That's how the e-world is supposed to work. Then we just mentioned all these issues about fundraising and legal issues. And for me, these are important things, but in the end, they are just how-tos. We are pretty confident that you will figure out the how-tos once you have made the decision to open up and to think about what might be possible here. Also, because you have this great network of Ashoka Fellows that you can talk to at any point. Like, we have so many great examples of people who have figured it out in some way or another. Together, you will find the answers to all of these how-to questions. What's more important to me is to start thinking about what could be possible for you and your organization by opening up. And to do that, not by yourself in an armchair, but with the other members of your organization, with your colleagues. That's where things start to get moving. And then when you meet these more practical obstacles, these how-to questions, you will find the answer. I pretty much can guarantee that much.
Thanks, Odin. Wendy, we've got you back.
I know. I'm now on my iPhone. I'm in an office that has terrible internet access, sadly.
Well, that was a very quick problem solved. You were back in a flash, so welcome back. So Eric had a question about...
I was going to say to Eric, I mean, that's really interesting. I mean, we did a benchmarking study. I mean, BCG did this for free for us of, you know, all these global organizations or network organizations, global, national, et cetera, and what their fee arrangements were and what their experience was. And the big takeaway from it was, if you can possibly avoid it, then do, because the revenue you get back isn't very much, because many people end up not paying. Like, they argue with the system so much, and you end up spending all your time arguing about whether they should pay or not, and it has all these cultural downsides. I mean, we heard that very consistently, but I'm very curious. I mean, actually, I'm going to go look into that. I mean, one, did we look at Nature Conservancy, and two, do they really believe in that system? Because if so, I mean, maybe that's something to look at. I could see that, you know, maybe that's just, maybe that could work. This is a constant dilemma for us. So,
Eric, it would be great for you to share if there's like any link or information about that model, to drop it in the Google Doc, and to all of us with any of these things, if there are other examples of what we're talking about that you're thinking might be a good idea, will probably be a good idea for others on the call to explore. So as much as we can, as we kind of go into these last few minutes, thinking about, just what are the resources or questions that we can be sharing with each other, because you know, you are all so far ahead in thinking about scale and in really important creative ways. So Eric, yeah, please share that, and others as well, was the short way of saying that. So we are in our last few minutes. I wonder if I would just love to hear reflections from folks on the call, either a question that's still open, even if we don't get to it today, or just what's sticking out about what we spent the last hour talking about. I'll just... Dave.
I have a kind of question and comment. Hi, Wendy. Which is, it's really around pattern recognition. I mean, I think many of us came into this call looking for pattern recognition, looking from the lessons that you had and trying to share it back with our work. And it's a question about how you use pattern recognition internally, because what you've said is there's tons of pattern recognition, and you've given everyone enough room to experiment. So you're like the best at pattern recognition. Like, we're coming in trying to learn from you, right? My guess is that you must just be always thinking about pattern recognition and when to raise things up and when to say, you know what, that's not a thing to try and replicate. So I'm just curious how you address that, maybe even for those of us who are trying to listen, to take something away for, you know, tomorrow or even later today.
Yeah.
I see a lot of heads nodding, so maybe we do take a minute or two to explore that.
And David, I mean, your point, I do think that that's pretty much what we do at Teach for all day long, is pattern recognition. But when your actual question there was, how do we do it, or what? Sorry, I may have missed the question. I was just absorbed in your observation.
Well, I'm curious, maybe just for closing us, what are some strategies that you would recommend for us to basically take the lessons here and use them? So how are ways you've maybe gotten good at that internally that we can use?
Yeah, Paula put it well. How do you teach other people to be recognizers of key patterns? People on this call even.
That's a great way to put it.
Gosh, you guys, you're stumping me in a way. I mean, you know, what we're doing, I mean, what we've realized is that the patterns, and this is like the biggest lesson, which I didn't even go into, but like of the actual work, which, I mean, there are many lessons, but the one that has struck me in the Teach for All journey is how many patterns there are from place to place. Like in fact, for anyone who hasn't yet like really contemplated the global piece, like I just think, you know, this is a huge accelerator taking a global approach, because the fact is there are so many brilliant people all around the world, and they think differently because they are in different and diverse contexts, and the issues we are addressing are eerily similar from place to place. Like literally, we have one theory of the problem that the network has created, meaning the roots of the issues we're addressing are so similar, which means the solutions are shareable. So I think what we've done to identify patterns is to find really wonderful people to be in these global knowledge teams who spend all their time out across all these different countries, who are seeing the same issues. I mean, I don't know how to recognize patterns other than through gaining the experience of seeing lots of things over and over, so that they start realizing this is the fundamental insight that all of these people are sharing. And actually, here's a divergent thought that could be a real innovation. Like, I think it is really hard to cultivate that in people. I think it's one of the challenges of the work at the center is we need really experienced people at the center who have not only experience bringing a lot to it, but a lot of experience in the network, because I don't know how to create that other than through experience, actually, and seeing lots of things in lots of different contexts.
Having eyes on it.
That's beautiful. I'd love to just hear a couple thoughts. I don't think that we have time for more questions, but I'd love to hear just, again, reactions, things that are sticking with you. And before you do that, you all need to smile so that I can take a screenshot of this beautiful group. Wonderful. Okay. Last thoughts, reactions.
So I just have a couple of things that, I mean, so much of it stood out. It's like, for us, it's so gratifying to hear Wendy talk, because we do a lot of theoretical and we share examples, but to hear the live example is really so exciting, and knowing how much impact this is really having globally. And the two of the things that really stuck out for me today that we've been saying, but I feel like we should have a whole new article on opening up doesn't mean letting go completely. Like there is this balance. It's not just letting it all go free. I think you stated that so well, and I think that's a critical point. The other thing that I think was interesting, you talked about it being luck, and we actually think about it differently. The fact that you've attracted all these really eager and enthusiastic people, you mentioned it, you know, that you've magnetized people. I think actively looking to become a magnet needs to be part of this plan. Like, how do you make things so sticky? How do you become magnetic? If you're having a really hard time becoming magnetic, maybe there's a reason for that. You know, I think that's a really key point in attracting the right kind of people, and maybe, you know, the filter on quality versus lack of quality. But I think that magnetism needs to be sort of played up. How do you make things sticky and magnetized, as you guys have, to attract the right kind of people into your network? So anyway, thank you for all of that. Really,
Great.
really right on target.
Oh, thanks.
Any last thoughts? Otherwise, I have a suggestion.
Go.
So we have 2 minutes left. You all have access to this Google Doc. And I wonder if we end by folks kind of at the end, I made space for, I'll reshare this link too, like questions, what's next, needs and offers. I think so many of you asked similar questions, you're thinking through similar things, and so to the extent that, one, we can surface what questions still are top of mind, find and connect who's asking the same questions so folks can kind of think through this together, and we can connect them to, you know, the Globalizer team or, you know, other folks who have done this. And also just like what needs and offers or resources exist, just kind of getting out whatever, yeah, might make sense to move forward together with on you know, after this call is over. So I would love for folks to do that, take these extra 30 seconds when we end to share thoughts there. And then what I'll do is sort of distill everything into it, you know, one share back that will go out to everybody.
Good.
Sound good?
Great.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for taking time out of your Friday afternoon. This was wonderful.
Thanks.
This was
Very well
really
done.
great.
Thank you, Brittany, for putting it all together so well. Really well done.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining in.
And thank you, Wendy, and all the participants. Really
Absolutely.
exciting.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Bye.
All right. Have a wonderful weekend.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.